By this point, you probably already know the drill, but by chance you don't, this is a video where I analyze, rank, and give fun facts about every single TF2 weapon. I do this month by month, and this month is Medic. If you've already seen the large videos I put back in January, then you don't need to watch this because it houses the exact same content. Unless you want to. This is just cut up to make it easier to watch so you can find your favorite class's weapons a little bit easier. That being said, let's get into it. The Amputator. Poor Medic. Added December 17th, 2010. Why use this when you have the Uber Salt? It's not terrible, but the taunt effect is niche, and the plus 3 health while active bonus is not worth giving up the 25% Uber on swing. C tier. Trivia. When this weapon released, it had no downside, similar to the Salon Bao when it released, and the current 3rd degree. The Blutsauger, whatever you want to call it, added April 29th, 2008 in the original Gold Rush update, the Medic update. The perfect battle medic weapon, though the crossbow is just insanely good, so this weapon is often outclassed. It's really worth using, and that kind of goes for all syringe-based weapons, to be honest. Overall, it's just kind of average, it's nothing too special. I put this in the C tier in the original video, so that's exactly where it's going to stay. Though, an interesting piece of trivia, upon release, its only downside was no random crits. Pretty balanced, right? You'd be surprised, this was actually a very common practice for Valve back in the day, with the only downside being that it couldn't crit. The Crusader's Crossbow, December 17th, 2010. What is there to say? Everyone knows this is the best medic primary. There is no reason to use anything else. In terms of medic weapons, this is an S tier weapon. And in terms of overall, it's still an S tier weapon. Trivia. Well, when this weapon came out, it actually didn't have a unique projectile, borrowing the Huntsman's arrow. This is why the Crusader's Crossbow has the no headshot stat. Also used to have a flat 75 damage. And it didn't reload while stored. And it reloads slower. And the Kritzkrieg, added April 29th, 2008, in the Gold Rush update, aka the original Medic update. The Kritzkrieg is a solid option for Medic. While the Ubercharge will always be great, which is what the stock Medigun uses, the Kritzkrieg allows for the potential to absolutely decimate teams. In addition, it is a must-have for MVM in most situations, so that's why I'm putting it in the A tier. Trivia. You know I love to spoil you guys with facts, but the Kritzkrieg is a bit light. But just so we have some stuff, I'll give you a few little interesting facts about it. In May of 2009, a new taunt was added for the Kritzkrieg, instead of using the base Medigun taunt. And a cool little fact about this specific taunt is when performed, it will actually give you 11 health points back. And on release, the Kritzkrieg built Uber just 10% faster than stock. This would be increased to 25% shortly after. The Medigun. It came with the game on October 10th, 2007. The Medigun is a safe option, great for major pushes, as well as being solid in every other regard. A tier. Trivia. The Medigun actually has received a lot of little changes. For example, as you know, if you switch between teammates very quickly with an Uber charge, your Uber will drain very quickly. This was not originally a mechanic. Having multiple healing targets didn't drain Uber any faster than just having one. This was changed in April 2008, so now if you're switching between targets while your Uber is active, it will drain much quicker. For a short while, there was also an exploit in TF2 that would allow you to hold your Uber by holstering the Medigun, then bringing it back out when you needed invulnerability. This was changed in December of 2007. Very short-lived. Also, for a silly little fact, the Medigun used to be able to heal spies even when undisguised, which is kind of funny. There's a bunch of little other facts, such as the 3x build Uber speed during setup, but I want to keep this segment moderate, so let's move on. Oh boy, the Overdose. Added June 23rd, 2011. God, a lot of June 23rd, 2011. The Overdose is overshadowed by the crossbow, just like every other syringe gun. Though it's not bad, the movement speed is nice, it has some utility, but overall, it's a C tier weapon. Trivia. The beta version of the Overdose worked very differently than the current one. The plan for the Overdose, and I'll put it on screen here, was that it would deal 90% less damage and fire at half speed, but would coat anyone hit with a syringe in Mad Melt. The Quick Fix, added June 23, 2011, the poster child of the Uber update. The Quick Fix is my personal go-to medigun when my goal is healing. That's just because I have no idea how to use the Vaccinator. The Quick Fix does its job well, for the slight downside of half overheal, which is almost an upside. Since the teammates never reach max overheal, the Uber rate never actually slows down. This is a great medigun, and they really all are. A tier. Trivia. As you likely know, one of the stats is that you mirror any sort of quick movement of your healing target, such as rocket jumping, sticky jumping, thermal thrusting, etc. However, newer players might be ignorant to this, but the ability to run at scout speed while healing a scout used to be achieved only with the Quick Fix. That was one of its upsides, though in the Meet Your Match update of 2016, this attribute was applied to all mediguns across the board. Also, the Quick Fix was intended to have a 40% faster Uber charge rate, but got reduced to 25% on release. But you also couldn't overheal at all, so that's a cool little fact that I thought I'd add at the end. The Solemn Vow, added June 23, 2011. The Solemn Vow is the only other melee that medics may run. It has a passive upside and has great utility, offering the ability to see enemies' health, which is just a great tool, especially if your team does callouts, if you're a competitive player. It's hard to put down the Uber Saw since it's practically glued to most medics' hands at this point, though it is a great alternative. A tier. Trivia. Along with the Third Degree and Early Amputator, the Solemn Vow had no downsides when it released. It wasn't until Gunmetal of 2015 that it received a downside, absolutely decimating this weapon. They added a 10% swing speed penalty to a weapon with a passive bonus. Yeah, it was just so the weapon had some red text. It wasn't a real downside. The Syringe Gun, added on October 10th, 2007. The Syringe Gun is just bad. Hard to aim projectile, mediocre damage at best, no utility, and it isn't the crossbow. D tier. Trivia. Apparently, the Syringe Gun in the game files is called the Super SMG. This is likely somewhat of a holdover from Team Fortress Classic, where the medic used a weapon called the Super Nail Gun, while other classes used the standard nail gun. The SMG is a nail gun equivalent, even rumored to basically be the nail gun pointed over to TF2 in early builds, so it kind of makes sense. And second, before the major lighting and shader overhaul in early TF2's life, the Syringe Gun's cylinder used to spin just like the Spy's revolver's cylinder. The Uber Saw, added April 29th, 2008. The OG medic melee unlock, and the only medic melee consistently ran for the last 15 years. The Uber Saw doesn't really even need to be talked about. The only other melee that you could sometimes make a case for that might be better than the Uber Saw, like I said in some cases, is the Solemn Vow, and even then the stars align more often than that happens. The 25% Uber on hit for a 20% slower firing speed is just too hard to pass up in most scenarios. So it's obvious where this is going, S tier. Trivia. While the Uber Saw has remained unchanged since its addition to the game, it did have some new versions tested in the TF2's closed beta that had some downsides, new downsides, apart from the 20% slower firing speed. One included just having a damage penalty on top of it, though actually I'm not too sure if this would have replaced the swing speed penalty or not. It seems like it would have just been an addition, so that's what I'm going with, though I'm not 100% sure. Another version that was tested was where, upon a successful hit, 25 health would be taken. So, if you hit, I don't know, a scout or a heavy or whatever, you would lose 25 health. I mean, pretty self-explanatory, but just in case. Obviously, neither of these were added to the game. The Vaccinator, added December 20th, 2012. The Vaccinator is such a weird medigun. I know it can be really good, as I've fought against it many times, but I don't think I've actually used it in years. This gameplay footage I'm using right now, man, this is like the first time I've equipped it since, I don't know, maybe 2018. So it's hard to give a proper opinion on it. It has a decent learning curve compared to the other mediguns, and it works quite differently, but based on having fought against this thing, I have to put it in the S tier. It's just really, really good. Sure, it may be tough for new medics to get good use out of it, but medic who knows what he's doing, oh my god. It is really, really difficult to fight him. Trivia. Unfortunately, this trivia is going to be a bit less interesting due to my lack of experience with it. Though, when the Vaccinator came out, it didn't have its crit resistance it has now when you activate the Uber charge, with the same ammo type that the crit is coming from. Meaning, if you have the explosive resistance on, and a Crockett comes out of nowhere and hits you during your Uber, it will have decreased damage. However, the Vaccinator, for a short period of time, was overpowered to the extreme. The Vaccinator's ability to resist crits used to apply just to the person you were healing, regardless of whether the Uber was active or not. Like I said, it didn't come out with this stat, but when it was added, that's how it worked, and it was quite ridiculous. This was extremely annoying, especially for snipers, since a headshot is simply just a crit and not its own value. Every sniper did body shot damage based on its charge. So at most, you could do 150 damage to somebody who was being pocketed by a Vaccinator medic. This was changed alongside this laundry list of changes, the gunmetal update. So if you're interested in seeing what all that is, I'll put it up on screen, take time to pause, but we're moving on. The Vitasaur, added September 30th, 2010. The Vitasaur is a weird case. Currently it isn't bad by any means, and can be especially useful against a team that isn't all that great and just lets you poke them a few times. The problem is that the Ubersaw exists, and that thing, man, it's just, I hate to compare it to the Ubersaw, but it's true, the Ubersaw is just so hard to give up. Plus, the Vitasaur low-key kind of promotes dying. It was even worse on its inception, but we'll get to that when we get to that, don't worry, I didn't forget. The Vitasaw's okay, a good melee, but like I said, it's not the Ubersaw. C tier. Trivia. In November 2010, the Vitasaur was given a new taunt sound. That of the old Ubersaw taunt sound. I forgot to mention this in the Ubersaw section, but yeah, before the Ubersaw's Uber Slice taunt was added, it used to be based off the Bonesaw's taunt, but had a deeper violin sound. When the Ubersaw received the new taunt, the Vitasaur was given the old taunt sound. Here, have a listen. 2. Remember how I said this thing promotes dying? Well, as some of you may remember, before it had its organ system, it used to make it where you could store up to 20% of your Uber from your previous life for just having it equipped. That's it. For 10 less health, you could just equip this thing and save up to 20% of your Uber from your previous life. So if you died at 50%, you get to keep 20% of it when you respawn. It was a definite crutch. And last, similar to the Cowmangler 5000, there are rumors of a painted Vitasaur existing somewhere in the TF2 realm. Unlike the Cowmanglers, it isn't completely known whether it's true or not, as there's no actual footage of it, at least none that I could find.